All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Today is May 23rd, and the purpose of this meeting is for staff to bring a budget presentation to us, and so we'll start off with Mr. Wooten. Take the floor.
All right, thank you. Again, this is the annual budget recommendation from County Manager. I'm also the budget officer for statute, and so this is one time of the year where I get to wear that hat. There are other times during the year when we freeze spending or do budget amendments and so forth, but it's definitely something this time of year is done quite heavily. I could not do this job in preparing the budget without Ms. Bell, our finance director, who is to my rear here. She is invaluable to this process, and so she deserves a tremendous amount of thanks and credit for helping put this together. So as we go through, if you have questions that either she or I can answer, be glad to do that. Just raise your hand or interrupt. Of course, it's your room, your meeting. So I'd like to point out, have like a little bit of a quote or a joke sometimes in these presentations. I put this one, I think, in last year. It says, "Don't tell me where your priorities are. Show me where you spend your money, and I'll tell you what they are." So for the most part, I'll get into that in a little bit. What you see are your priorities. They're not staff's priorities. They're your priorities. This will be your budget after tonight to do with as you wish. Sometimes you have no choice in how monies are allocated. There are mandated services that you have to provide because of where we are in federalism. But for the most part, where you do have some discretion, this hopefully reflects what you want to do. So again, you know the organization, but just a reminder, below the Board of Commissioners, you have 3 appointed persons, being the manager, the attorney, and clerk of the board, and you have quite a few county agencies reflected there that are sometimes straightforward, sometimes not. And so I like to talk about, when I do the link presentation for the chamber, that for a county organization, it looks pretty simple on this screen, but it definitely isn't. There are a lot of interplay with other state and local agencies. So we've got a great team, great organization, and so we like to look at it that way, that we're not in different little avenues that are different from each other. We're all part of the same organization. So again, this is what you fund directly, and these are agencies that you fund indirectly. So and what I mean is that you're providing the funding, and then they provide the service. So some of these, like the school system, the college, are mandated. You must provide funding. Some are optional, like the chamber, Carson House, for example, are optional. And so prior boards have made a decision to fund those entities, and that is up to you to continue to do so. Again, except for like a school system or a college or a Vine Health, some of the other ones that are mandated. So I'll do a quick overview of the current year. I mentioned to someone earlier today in going through this that I could have kept going because so much has been going on this year. I think I added maybe one slide compared to last year, but didn't want to go on all night. But it could, because just so much is going on that's just really good that you're doing.
Actually, before you go on, the Old Fort Chamber, I didn't think there was one.
We still do an Old Fort allocation to the chamber.
Okay.
So it is spent specifically in the town, by the town chamber.
Thank you.
Good catch.
Tag in real quick, actually, we move on. Where do we find out the dollar amounts that we fund these at?
That will be in your ordinance.
Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
we don't have that here, do we? Right.
We'll make sure you have a copy.
Okay.
So the accomplishments, Again, we've not talked about COVID a lot in our meetings lately. It is still in the community, of course, so we can't forget about that. But just really proud of our staff and how they've worked. You know, very, very few exceptions from day one of the pandemic. Our staff have been working in person and been serving very well. Again, you know this, but the emergency services staff have been working earlier this year, especially in partnership with Foothills Health District, administering tests and vaccines. So we've stepped away from that and hope we're out of the COVID testing and vaccination business. But I know Mr. Keller and his staff are very willing to help whenever necessary for COVID type things. Other accomplishments, the shooting range was completed. May 2nd, we had that ribbon cutting for that event. 90% of the cost is federal funding, so that's worth highlighting every time we can talk about this. And 10% was paid for by the local taxpayer. This building was completed. We're working on relocation now within the next couple of weeks. So the staff that are moving into this building are very excited to be coming back downtown, better connections to our departments in here. The headquarters for emergency services will have the grand opening in a couple of weeks. We've talked about how nice it is to have better conditions and better facilities for our staff, especially there, but really excited about the improved response times that you'll see with the 4-station plan. That's really what it's about, having a much better facility, of course, compared to where they are now, but also the better response times. Parks and Recreation, you've done a tremendous amount, even beyond the shooting range in the last year, thanks to your direction and your investments of resources and also the hiring of Mr. Marsh. Lots of capital improvements have been made. But also, maybe just as importantly, there have been some important partnerships that have been accomplished in the last year with youth football and youth baseball, softball. And so many people have come up. I know you and Mr. Marsh and myself just saying thank you for where you are right now with the department, and look forward to where that's going to.
I will say those fields up in Old Fort look really good. The best they've looked in a long time. And the buildings.
Absolutely. So going back a couple of years, unfortunately with the pandemic, it's brought on a lot of challenges. One of those indirectly has been additional funding that has come to the county. First, it was the CARES Act a couple of years ago, and now the American Rescue Plan Act. Funding under ARPA, the guidance from the U.S. Treasury is very detailed, as you can imagine. And up until lately, it was very limited in how it could be spent. And so that was changed back in January, as you've understood. And so administering those funds is an administrative burden. It's a burden staff would gladly take for the benefit to our county, but it does add a burden to our staff. Of course, we've done, again, Ms. Bell is the lead on this, has done a fantastic job. Also, the county received several state capital grants in last year's budget from the state. And so again, administrative burden, but also worth the work, absolutely. So it creates work for staff, but work that we will gladly do for the payoff. Some other, looking at water for a second here, you authorized using some of those funds we talked about, an expansion to the existing Negro water system. So we met with engineers and we've kept you up to date on that. We completed a very small connection on Stacy Hill Road where we had 2 dead-end lines. So no additional customers, but big improvement in water quality there for our line. We submitted a grant thanks to the effort of staff here for service on Hoppy Tom Hollow Road. And we've initiated other water plan efforts. We talked about looking for grants for the error in West Marion Elementary, for example, so we're working on that as well. So I'll get into the recommendation and what's recommended for this coming year's budget. So I've talked about this a little bit. When you are looking at a county budget, even more so than a city budget, there's probably more than 4 considerations to make, but just to kind of narrow it down. You have state mandates, and that's where you have a DSS system, you have a courthouse you're operating, other things that you have to do whether you like it or not. You have your board priorities, so I like to highlight that we do not have to have a Parks and Recreation Department, a senior center, an EMS service, an animal shelter, a number of things that we fund because you've tended to continue to support those things that prior boards have initiated, in some cases a very long time ago. And so again, in the preparation, you have agency and department requests. So that would be internal and external, and then public requests. So your taxpayers, either through electronic communication, coming to meetings, stopping you at the store, church, whatever, saying you really need to put money into this and invest in this area. So you're trying to take all these things and filter it through available resources. And again, that means money. And then you end up with the budget recommendation. So the priorities in the recommendation are to increase public education funding, improve public safety through investments in emergency services in the sheriff's office, continue to improve county facilities, invest in community economic development, as well as initiate discussions of long-term operational and capital needs. So I'll touch on all those as we go through here. Just quickly on the process, just a reminder, I meet with each department head usually in the month of March, sometimes early April, to go over the requests they've made and submitted. I will meet with Ms. Bell to go over those requests and just look at how those fit with the bigger set of priorities that you've laid out, as well as in resources. We also meet with sometimes outside agencies, school system, college, for example. Present the budget recommendation to you. We will have the ad in the paper this week. We'll have a budget available for inspection. There will be a hearing on June 13th, and the budget will be approved before June 30th. So to get more specific in some of the new expenditure impacts that are in your budget, for public education, we're recommending for the operating $274,000 of new monies. Capital is only $1,600. These are percentage based. Community college operating $34,000 and the capital limit a little over $4,400. So total you see of $308,150 for public ed. Public safety, EMS facilities debt, that is tied in with the Station 4 and the headquarters building primarily. Operating capital, a big part of what you see out of that $145,000 is medical supplies, as well as fuel costs for our vehicles. Also, some additional costs with operating new facilities that are, we've got 2 now instead of 1, one much larger than the existing, so there's a cost associated with that. And then the salaries and benefits for both EMS and Sheriff's Office are related to the increase that was approved a couple of weeks ago. Looking at the county organization as a whole, we've talked about the current year raise and benefit impacts, the prior approval, talked about health insurance at a recent meeting. We are working on improving the fiscal stability of the self-insurance plan, so there's an additional employer contribution totaling a little over $54,000 there. The retirement system rate increase, some of this is tied into the salary increase, but a big part of this is related to the retirement system requiring the county to increase its employer contribution. This is something that's been in place for about 3 or 4 years, if not 4, to where the retirement system is requiring all of the member entities to increase their contributions in order to have a close to 100% fully funded pension plan as possible. So again, this is something you have no choice about. The bill is going to come due regardless. Additional parks and recreation staffing, a big part of that is related to the shooting range, if not close to 100% of it. And then waste manpower contract workers. This is related to, for many years, we contracted with the Department of Corrections for inmate labor at our solid waste facilities. And with the closure of the minimum security unit, we have been using manpower staffing. We did do a cost benefit analysis essentially in the current year looking at manpower versus county staff. And based on that analysis, it did make more fiscal sense to continue with manpower, at least for the time being. Looking at county facilities and equipment.
The manpower excess charge over the labor cost is 45% more. If you're paying $10 an hour, you're having the county's paying $14.50 per hour. Is that correct?
There is a administrative fee. As far as the specific amount, I have to
Yeah.
do that to you.
That is, you would have needed, what, 5 workers up there, Ashley? Is what you...
Approximately. What we're not paying through that is FICA, of course. We're not paying, which they were fully or partially benefited. We're not paying the health insurance cost.
But just between 2 workers, you need up to $50,000 in salary and benefits and the retirement.
So again, for right now, it does make sense, but it is something we need to keep an eye on to where we revisit that every year. On the county facilities and equipment, EMS, sheriff, and waste collection, these are related to vehicles. So an ambulance, patrol cars, and a waste truck. That's what those 3 are. As far as community economic development, the number 1 right there is the increased waste disposal cost. We are, as a community, disposing of more waste now than ever. In some ways, that's a good indicator of how things are going economically, but there's an associated cost with that, of course. NC Forest Service, this is one of the few entities on the state level that you fund. So this is related to the NC Forest Service presence in the county. And it runs about $70,000 to $80,000 a year that you're funding on an annual basis. There is an increase this year associated with the vehicle purchase. So they're needing to purchase a truck for service in this community specifically. A couple of weeks ago, you approved a $20,000 appropriation for the affordable housing project that Gateway Wellness is working on. So that will be in the budget for 3 years. The Foothills Health District has asked for a 5% increase, so that's recommended in here. I did check with the Rutherford County Manager, and they also recommended 5% as well, which theirs is a little bit higher because of spacing population. The next item, foster care. So you meet with Ms. Sprouse every month, and as far as I'm aware, every month that she is presented, she has noted that our foster care board payments have increased exponentially over the last couple of years. And a big part of that increase lately is tied to some legislative changes that have happened to where group homes are charging us now a higher amount per child than they were in prior years. So we have a great roster of foster homes in our county. Very appreciative for that time and effort those folks put in to keep that every year. But we only have so many spaces for the 115 or so kids that we have in custody. And so we do have to place children in out-of-county group homes at times, which is not our choice, obviously, at first. It is our choice we do have to make. And so we do have to pay a higher board payment based on that. And that's where a lot of that cost is coming from.
We have a formula error there too, actually. The total's
The total.
9,094.
Okay, good catch.
No, it's your clerk over there.
Uh,
We've looked and looked and looked at it.
Sometimes you can stare at so many things. And then recreation operations, a big part of that is a shooting range operation. And as you do more things, as is happening now, you do have to pay for that. So it's reflected in there. Again, we'll get that corrected total to you. So the recommended proposed budget for next fiscal year is $54,425,329. The difference of $4,669,693, or a 9.44% increase over the current year. So this shows a historical comparison for your budget ordinances for the last 12 plus years. And the rate is proposed to remain the same at 0.5775 cents. Just a quick reminder on your revenue, 51% of this recommendation is property tax. Most counties are going to be in that range. There may be a few, especially in tourism heavy areas, where your sales tax may be higher percentage. Just highlight the significant revenue changes. You do have an increase of 2.88%, a little over $700,000 for your property tax. On DSS revenue, there is an offset, usually about 45% whenever there's an increase on expenditure, close to 50 in some cases. So that is, there are some other expenditure impacts in the budget other than the foster care, so you do have a revenue offset to some degree. Transit system is coming into the general fund, and so it's 100% impact, of course. And then
the 723, is that what they? This is total revenue. That's not. Are they operating at a profit or loss?
It breaks even based on current state and federal funding we're receiving right now.
Right.
Then the American Rescue grant makes up the lion's share of the increase, and the other funds. And in sales and other taxes, you do see an increase for Article 3940, a decrease for 42, an increase for 44. And those of you who've been on the board for a while remember we were doing a hold harmless for the city on sales tax, and that was removed this year. And then a real estate tax for next door has a slight increase as well. And just a quick overview of the expenditures. Talk most about expenditures in this presentation. The largest piece of the pie for us is public safety at about 28%, and then human services at 25%, and then education at 21%. I've talked about local education funding. So the recommended increase is approximately 3% for current expense and capital outlay for both the school system and the college.
They ask for 6%.
Approximately for both.
That was all for personnel and retirement.
That's right.
The state approved budget increasing the wages for teachers.
That's right. Yes, that's my understanding, yes, sir.
And what is their plan on how to make up that difference.
So if you do not fully fund an increase, again, this is your decision after tonight. It is up to the school system to decide how they're going to make that, any shortfall they might perceive to be there once it's received in their hands. They do have fund balance.
And it is heavy.
Right, and so that is an option. Most fund balance that a school system is going to carry. There are some exceptions, especially when you have federal funding opportunities like we've had the last couple of years, but most fund balance that they do carry is local funds that you have appropriated in prior years that through their diligent and prudent budgeting and expenditures have not been spent. So that is an option. So that would be the first place they would look into.
It's my understanding there are about 8 months worth of general fund for the labor, and that's required for them to carry 6 months. So they do have a little bit of a buffer there. Just, we're not voting on it tonight, so it's just going to be something that I'm going to kind of check into from the perspective so we can talk about that a little bit more.
Absolutely. So this slide has been on the presentation at least for 20 years. It used to have on it as well fire department funding, and one time used to fund fire departments to some degree out of the general fund, and now it's completely property tax based and the fire tax countywide district based. We've talked about this as well. When you do a solid waste fund allocation, it's recommended in the budget over 1.4 million. So the equivalent is about 3.4 cents. And we've talked about this before, this is not news to you. Even in this current year, we've talked about it. That is typically paid for with revenues of the general fund monies. And we recommend transition away from that contribution starting in 2024 fiscal year.
And that is going to be told to the North Carolina Treasurer so we can stop getting our letters.
That's right. So a quick overview on some of our major debt that we have. Some of these go way out and just started, like the EMS bases. July of 2040. Old Fort Senior Center does pay off in the coming fiscal year, so that's about $64,000 that will come off in this coming year. The jail courthouse renovation, this is where the law enforcement center was expanded and where the courthouse had the holding cells added and renovated and the elevator was added. That pays off in 2030. The courtroom addition, self-explanatory, but also the renovation that took place pays off in 2033. There are other debts that are more minor that are EMS vehicles and trash trucks, those sorts of things. Don't consider those major, but they're pretty significant on an annual basis. But these are the major drivers of our debt.
This building is paid for?
Yes, sir. No debt. So I believe, since I've been with the county in about 20 years, we've never done this before. Might not do it next year, we'll just see. But did want to point out that you had 5 different departments ask for staffing changes that are not in the recommendation. So the first, and I'll just list them all out here. The Sheriff's Office asked for a major for operations as well as a public information officer. Tax assessing asked for property mapper assistant and a tax clerk position. Building inspections, as you can see, asked for a fire inspector. Social services asked for 2 income maintenance caseworkers. And the register of deeds asked for a part-time position to be converted to full-time. Every one of these folks presented compelling arguments for why those changes should be made. However, based on all the other obligations that were in front of us, believe in front of you, it's just not possible this year. But that's why I put future concerns, because I'm pretty sure if they're seeing the need now, that concern is not going to go away. Talk about capital just for a bit. You've talked about some of these, if not all of these, to some degree. Talked about DSS. Even last year, they were spread over 3 different buildings, and all 3 are at capacity. You have authorized an analysis of our options there, and so there's been very preliminary work from an architect. Nothing to report at this time, of course. 911 Center is located in the lower level of the City of Marion Police Department. It's been a great partnership. That went into place about 10, 12 years ago. And we appreciate our partners there at the city. However, if you've seen it, which most of you probably have, it's very tight. There's no room for growth. And so we do, Mr. Keller has been discussing this. He has brought it to your attention at prior meetings. This is something that we do need to keep an eye on and study. The next one, we have had a request from the state that we look at our animal shelter. It's very small, to look at doing a small expansion there based on some concerns the state does have. We have a very dedicated staff, and our inspections are very appropriate for what we're doing, but they do encourage us to think about that. Probably about 9 months ago, I believe, you authorized a capital planning study for the transfer station. It's probably an understatement to say that the facility needs major improvements. And I mean the road, the scale house itself, as well as the transfer station at the top of the hill. We have just received a draft copy of that. And so we'll be more than likely presenting that to you within the coming months once we get some of the staff level questions answered. I have it before you. And then we've also talked about parks and recreation facilities. Some of our facilities, as you're aware, need some upgrades and are existing original infrastructure, like in Maple Leaf. They have a lot of lighting that needs to be replaced and so forth. So next steps, like I said, this is now your budget. You can take it and throw it in the garbage can if you like after tonight. You do have to have a hearing, so that will be scheduled for June 13th. The public will be able to come and inspect the ordinance at any time they would like between now and then, and comment on it at the 13th meeting. And you can approve it after the hearing at that meeting if you would like, but it definitely has to be approved by the end of June. Any questions?
Okay, we'll meet again on the 13th of June, and the public hearing will do it, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Mr. Wooten. Anybody else have any questions or comments to him?
No, just one thing I'll say, the lights are on here, but we've had prior discussion about the lights and I'll wait till, I'll really make a motion on having that bid. I'll just make a motion now that we have staff just have the lights bid to see what it's going to cost us, so we can know.
And maybe
Maple Leaf, yeah, right. Those are dated, and there's been several of their directors hit me up and say, y'all need to assess that and look at that. And so I told them, so we're working on things, and but I think we get a bid. It's not something we got to do it. At least we know what the cost is going to be. I make most we get a bid to see what the cost will be to replace those lights and poles at Maple Leaf, to get the LED lighting.
Got a motion second. Any discussion on that?
What are the other issues that you were saying needed lighting in the county, other than just the Maple Leaf?
It's definitely a major one. Old Fort I don't know, there's been an analysis of the age and condition. I know there have been some electrical wiring issues in Old Fort, but it might be worth looking at.
I'll make the motion to include staff as, determine the need at Old Fort as far as lighting too.
I agree.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. You bring that information back to us, Mr. President?
Absolutely. I do have something else to present, and then I will introduce Mr. Silver. You don't have to act on it tonight, but I do have in front of you some fee requests for you to consider. Under solid waste, the first item there, we receive every year an increased letter, it's never been a decrease, from Republic Industries for a CPI adjustment for our contract on our hauling and disposal of our solid waste. I have not received a letter this year, but knowing what the CPI was more than likely going to be for the month of March, probably going to be at least in the 6.5%, 7% range, I would recommend the consideration of a increase to our tipping fee, which is now $60, to increase it to $60.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion due to our carrier hauler increasing the fees that they charge the county to haul our solid waste off, that we go ahead and move from 60 to 62 as staff is requesting.
And I would make that effective August 1st.
Effective August 1st.
Okay.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
And the next item is the setting the minimum, I believe.
Do we not already charge $5 when they cross the scales?
That is the maximum that we charge for residential. So what we talked about several months
Oh, so
ago.
you wait and you come back, that's right, you wait.
So what we talked about several months ago was implementing a $5 minimum for all waste that's brought across for the folks that are crossing the scale. That would be at the rate that you just approved.
I don't think it's asking too much. What's the pleasure of the board?
The difference of this is just the,
So right now, I'll be very on the nose about it. So if I'm hauling waste out of my basement or whatever that does not fit in a trash bag and it's not C&D, so there's kind of a middle ground there. And I take it to the transfer station, I'm charged $5. Whether it weighs 3 tons or 3 pounds, I pay $5. And so what we've talked about with the aim of improving the fiscal health of that $1.4 million transfer out of the general fund, as well as improving the collectability of some of our fees that we're collecting, that we go to the model of charging folks that flat rate whenever they cross.
So I just always assumed it's $5, and I never really paid attention to it unless you wait, come and going. So, I mean, I think it's fair.
I'd say that it rarely ever comes up less than $5, does it?
Right, so just to,
It's really not gonna be a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I thought we were already, that's told me, I said, I thought we were already doing $5.
but again, the maximum right now is $5 for folks if I'm cleaning out my basement.
I make a motion we approve it for this sheer reason that the maximum is already $5, and so we're not increasing.
The recommendation is to move.
This will be a minimum of $5.
This is changed.
Oh, so the maximum now, okay, whoa, so the maximum now is 5, right?
Right.
And
So
the weight,
the
and anything above.
as we talked about previously, the recommendation that we talked about several months
No,
ago.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Is that if you cross the scale, you're paying that per tonnage cost.
They would still pay extra if it weighed X amount, is that what we're saying here?
If it's 2 tons, you're paying whatever the
$5
2-ton rate is.
And just for clarity, it's $60 a ton,
That's right.
what we're going to, with a minimum of $5. So if I'm taking in 4 things and it's only a couple hundred pounds, then I'll have to pay $5.
That's right.
I agree with that. I'll make a motion to go with staff
I just
recommendation.
think it's an unfair recommendation.
I'll
No,
second. We did the motion on second.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Wasn't in the motion, but are you okay with August 1st?
Unanimous.
As well.
August 1st is fine.
Still, it won't hit most of your people who are, the average citizen is just cleaning out some stuff and on and on. It's still not going to really hurt because it's going to be basically 5. You'd have to have a lot of weight to really start getting into anything above 5.
The C&D that you mentioned, what does that consider? Construction?
That's right.
So-
Construction demolition, so if you're hauling off
Carpet?
kitchen or carpet or
I mean,
something,
you may have $10 worth of trash you're hauling off today,
Yeah.
clean up.
Right.
But it's nothing that's unfair at
And
all.
that does not include the construction demolition. If it's doing that, then it is going to be more in line with the heavier pricing.
right, somebody's bringing a C&D, they're probably gonna have closer to a ton, but if they're cleaning out of, and I use that, euphemism, whatever, but more than likely just hauling off, pick up a truckload of just.
Bob Joe could break a scale someday for Ray and get rid of his junk.
Some people have, and I have to be careful, it's really not my base, but it might be,
Build your landfill,
several
take
times.
mine out there.
So the other was the water,
Water.
and
Before we get
so,
on the solid waste, I was asked today about if there's anywhere in the county people could take personal materials that have them shredded.
we do not accept them, but I know there can be shred events scheduled, like with the state employees credit union, can be contacted, which we'd be glad to do so,
Okay.
and find out when they might be doing a shred event sometime
Yeah, if we
soon.
could do that, just make it public information.
Absolutely.
Let the community know.
It's a good idea. The water recommendation, the city of Marion presented their budget last week. They are recommending, I believe, a 6% increase on their water rates. We purchased from the city, of course, and so we are recommending that you do a 9% increase. And so the 3% difference is based on increased expenditures that we're seeing through growth. You do get more revenue sometimes, and it takes a while, but we are having increased costs.
I make a motion to approve staff's recommendation for the water rate to increase to 9% due to the fact the CD raised their rate by 6%, and we're trying to offset cost where we buy our water from the city.
Second.
And August 1st on that as
On
well.
August 1st, we did pick it.
Second, got a motion second, any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
That's all I had. Mr. Silver is going to just do a very brief, right? Overview of a document that was passed out to you. This is a capital inventory that some of this is based on information that we put together previously. Probably 80%, if not more, is just work that he's been doing for the last couple of months. With Ms. Bell's help, Mr. DeFoy's help, but have you helped any? I was trying to give you credit.
I'm not even gonna take credit. I got it all later.
Probably her too. So he's done a lot of heavy lifting on it. And you're gonna pick out, so you're gonna go over the, just table contents and make a summary and pick out one of the
Yeah, and then we'll go through an example of property.
Okay?
So good evening, thank you guys for letting me present to you this evening. As you guys heard from Ashley's presentation, and you know, just from doing this for a while, Capital is an extremely important thing for the county. That's where a lot of our money goes to. So I'm happy to present to you the new fiscal year 2023 capital asset report. The clerk has copies for each of you guys. And if you would like to have an electronic copy, there are some color-coded things in here that I can supply to you after the meeting. So kind of detailed the aspects of the report. The report has all McDowell County real estate capital assets. McDowell County currently owns 48 properties, 39 of which of them have facilities on them, and therefore the county is responsible for all maintenance needs of those properties. 9 are undeveloped or partially developed parcels. Additionally to the county-owned assets, the county also leases several spaces from other organizations to fulfill our services. Currently, there are 7 of those spaces that we lease out. Whenever we lease a space, we're typically in charge of the maintenance needs for the interior of those spaces. So, this report details, the first section of these reports will detail the property introduction, which gives a general idea of the location and description of the property. These parts of the reports also inform about property history and the current function of each of our properties. There's also a long-term maintenance plan, which provides significant components of each building, when they are last repaired or replaced, the approximate time the asset should be inspected, the time they should need to be repaired or replaced based off research, and the approximate cost for the repair or replacement. It's important to note that, and I'm sure you all know this, but it's important to note that different assets will degrade at different rates, so it's not a specific date that we will have to replace it, but it's a range of when we may have to replace an aspect. And then lastly, there's a short-term maintenance request, which is the request given in by each department head for the assets that they're in control of. All of these replacements and the repairs and replacements in the report are, of course, subject to the priorities of the Board of Commissioners and the condition of the assets when we do our inspections. So if you guys will turn to me to page 9, we'll go through a good example of kind of how this can be used. So page 9 is 1580 East Main Street in Old Fort, also known as the EMS Station 2. It is built in 2002. It is 2,800 square foot approximately. This section of the report goes through the history, what this building is used for, and also the major components at in the last paragraph. If you turn the page to page 10 of the report, you can see the long-term maintenance plan, which details every single part or a major part that could cost the county a lot of money to replace or repair. It's important for me to note during this section that our inspection date is based off what the research indicates is the first year that the asset could go bad. So an inspection would entail county staff going and taking a look at it. It's not an official inspection. And then our repair/replacement due date is the anticipated last year that asset should be good based off of research. Turn one more page with me. Page 11 is, you guys have probably seen this before. This used to be given to the county manager separately. Now we've just incorporated it into this plan because we thought it would be a more cohesive document. But it details all the requests from each of the departments, and you can see the requests that have been made for EMS Station 2. And so kind of the purpose of this report moving forward, number one, it's going to be given to every single commissioner every year. It will be updated every year with new dates, better research if more information has came out, so that we can give commissioners such as yourself or yourselves updates on kind of when our buildings could be going bad or aspects of our buildings could be going bad. Also, it could be used in the future to develop a schedule for inspections in our maintenance department to view the major compartments so that we are ahead of any expenses that may be coming down the line. And lastly, it allows for proactiveness on the part of the county so that way we can provide funding for major maintenance projects in the future. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys may have.
Mr. Chairman, I would state that I'm very, very impressed with the plan, the capital asset report. This is tremendous. I've been here 19 years, and this is what we've been needing for a long time. And this is the detail on the long-term maintenance plan, the components that comprise these. This is a home run. This is like a Bible right here. You know what I mean? This is the word.
Yeah, I understand it. You've done a great job on this. It's very professional and it's very detailed. You've done a great job.
I appreciate it.
This was one of the first things I asked him for the budget, I asked him for the asset list, and there wasn't one when we first came on. And this is amazing. I do have a specific question.
Yes.
You want to go back to page 11?
Okay.
Just for the fun of it, just looking at this, the anticipated cost of the signage, painting, and all that stuff is there, and it tallies up to $58,000, which has already been consumed, it's already been paid, correct?
So in this instance, if you totaled up what Mr. Keller, for example, is asking for there, that's what it would be?
If we had to replace it.
Right, well, this is what he's requesting to happen in the year. It's not what's probably going to happen.
Mhm.
That's been worked on now.
Yeah.
He said it was going to be,
What kind of signs do you want that over $20,000? I like
They're-
the signs.
So it's also
It's lit and they're high dollar.
they're
Yeah.
probably like the,
Oh, he's going
Oh,
to
yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah.
20,000.
very expensive.
Also, to kind of go to the next question, the last column, anticipated cost for 6 to 10 years,
yeah.
where does the 1.25 million come from?
So that is anticipating a remodel and construction of EMS Station 2. That's
Total loss,
Miss-
have to replace it.
Yeah, Mr. Keller is anticipating the need for a remodel or construction in the next 6 to 10 years.
Okay.
And these are not specific numbers, these are estimates.
Oh, you
Okay,
can-
so what they think it will cost.
Right, so we're just, I was just asking the questions.
Yeah.
But like hypothetically on that one,
Yeah.
you know, you've got one bay there right now, that may be good for forever. That would be something, as we're moving forward, that Mr. Keller and his staff would have to recommend. We need 2 bays, can you add on? Definitely at that point, it'll need a refresh, based on it being 20 years old now. So.
My last question, how long have you been with the county?
About 9 months, I think.
You have done an exceptional job, and I just want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. And thank you again for letting me present to you.
We have been very blessed to have 2 young people work in our office that have made my job a lot easier this year. Because I mentioned the rescue plan money and the state money. Like I said, that is wonderful. There will be a lot of good things come out of that. But Alice and I couldn't do it alone. And so Lake and Ava have done a great job of helping us stay sane. So really appreciate their efforts and
Well, hats off to Lake and the Maven.
That's right.
I only have so much here to give, so.
Yeah, we appreciate that report. We appreciate the hard work you guys did on it to make it happen. Great job. Is there anything else?
Yes, sir, that's all I have.
Motion adjourned.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.